Hey everybody, welcome to the Crit House. I'm Jeff Larson, and today we're going to look at the work of Angela Rowlings. Angela Rowlings is a photographer based in Boston and on Prince Edward Island in Canada. She spent 16 years at the Boston Herald, and before that she was with the Associated Press, the Chicago Tribune, and USA Today. She reports on climate, culture, and politics and other issues. She has taught photography at Boston University and Endicott College. And today, we will discuss the project you're looking at now, Culture and Climate on Prince Edward Island. These images are from a long-term project that began in 2021. It looks at the intersection of culture and climate on Prince Edward Island. Angela Rowlings' grandmother was raised on a farm where they grew potatoes, hay, and turnips. She spent her summer vacations riding horses, watching sunrises, and salmon swimming upstream. Last year, Angela witnessed the devastation of Hurricane Fiona. It was the worst storm ever to hit the province. She had covered natural disasters in the U.S., but had never seen damage of that magnitude. Having seen her childhood playground facing challenges even before Fiona, it inspired her to document how the climate crisis affects this community. Today on the Crit House, we also have Erin Carey. She is a curator, an artist, and an educator. She has a BA from Sarah Lawrence, an MFA from Tufts University. She was the academic and the gallery director at the New England School of Photography, and there she curated more than 100 exhibits. Erin's photographic work explores the nuances of the American landscape and its vernacular. She has an ongoing project called A Spring That Love Remembered. Erin works in the MFA program at Tufts University, and she also works as a preparator and art handler at the Addison Gallery, and she's on the board of directors of the Griffin Museum of Photography. Also with us today is Erin Friedlander. She is a Los Angeles photographic artist, and she first found her passion for photography when she was 16. She took to the street while at Ithaca College. She worked for decades for commercial photographers before setting off on her own. And after raising a family in Hong Kong, she moved to Los Angeles in 2018. She is now the co-director with Pasadena Photography Arts, where she curates and hosts the open show. Her book is called Extended Frame. Thank you all for joining us, Erin Carey, Erin Friedlander, and Angela Rowlings. Angela, I'm very impressed with this project. I think it's so well done. And one of the things that I was excited about you coming on the program with is a lot of times we've been doing work that is sort of with photographers who are learning the craft and sort of coming along. You are bringing years of experience as a reporter and as a photographer, and there's something that is really that's so impressive about this body of work. It's very professional. We haven't had the opportunity to sort of talk about this level of work, and I'm looking forward to that discussion. So let's take a look at some of the images. Angela, if you could tell us a little bit about what this project is and what you're looking for in terms of input. Let's start with that, if that's okay.
So I started this project because I was planning a trip to PEI, and I began doing research about the island. This is still when Canada was in lockdown, and they weren't allowing US citizens to come up, or even non-residents, to PEI. And so I did a lot of research ahead of time, and what started as a climate change project, I realized upon getting to PEI again after 20 years absence, I realized how strong the culture is there, how people are so interconnected with each other, with the land, with the ocean. Everybody is either working in tourism or farming or fishing, or they know somebody in their family or a close friend that is. So people are really interconnected in that way. And I wanted to give a feel for that. In recent years, there's also a lot of new immigration, and I also wanted to include that as part of the story as well. And so it has evolved into being a story that is the intersection of culture and climate, because they're very interwoven.
That's perfect. Thank you. Thank you for the summary. Erin, why don't you dive in, tell us your thoughts. You had a chance to look at the project.
Absolutely. So I want to start off by saying the project is really quite fantastic.
It is.
It is. So the first thing I put, so I always take notes as I'm reviewing, and then I'll revisit my notes later and kind of like make sure that everything's kind of lined up, like first impressions, and then as you dig in and you linger with things. And so I wrote down that you're a natural storyteller, like your ability in terms of like being able to connect to subject and convey ideas and then emotional things is really strong. The overall experience that you leave me with, or like what I take away, so I'll talk about it as like an overarching, like my umbrella impression, and then maybe we can jump into more specifics as we go into our talk, is really that the body of work is about community. So even though you used the title, like it's obviously rooted in a place, and you said it was about climate, I was really, really compelled by the aspect of community. And so I was looking for and was touched by the ideas of resilience. We see commerce, we see family, we see public spaces, we see private spaces. One of the things I really adored throughout the whole project as a landscape photographer myself, I was really interested in the way that you were able to define the place as a character that appears and lives and breathes. Kind of like the same way in Sex and the City, right? That like New York City becomes a character that we care about. So you're able to make me learn about this place and care about the place. The overall approach of the photographer is one of like reverential respect, but then also based on the way that sometimes you're using like quality of light and color, depth of field. I also see that like you're enamored of the place, that there's magic, like you truly believe this place is special, and I can feel that in the renderings of the place. So maybe I'll leave it there and invite Ellen to jump in.
Ellen.
Well, I would agree with most everything that Erin has shared. I've definitely felt your family connection. I could feel your soul in these photographs. This is just a magical moment that you captured here, of tenderness in this little town. I've been to Prince Edward Island a long time ago. I remember the magic. I remember the light. I feel that here. In the storytelling, I was riveted by the farmers, the potatoes, the fishermen, some of the people. I almost want to see, I was wondering if you're interested in playing with some of the black and whites, maybe taking the personal, the people, and putting them into black and white so that they become a little bit more your story about the farmers and the community, and then you take the people and you remove them. You kind of make them a little special by taking the color off, and we look at them a little differently. Just a thought as far as sequential, and changing it from how we are used to seeing a story, pushing it a little bit. Love this magic moment in the sea.
I was going to say that. I was going to like interrupt you and just say, this image when I saw it, Angela, is just fantastic. So
fantastic.
Lovely.
I was extremely seasick at that moment, but
you would never know.
paying the price for your art.
Yeah.
Just beautiful.
How long were you out? How long were you photographing this?
The whole project?
Yeah.
Since August of 2021, and I'm actually going back tomorrow. I've been going almost every month for a couple weeks each month.
And this is an amazing photograph.
This was post Fiona, and so many buildings, barns, homes were just completely destroyed. And I was just driving out to this one area on the North Shore, and I actually had driven past it, and in my rearview mirror I saw that little car, and I had to turn around and take a photo.
Well, thank God we did too. And I just want to like point out that you could have focused on like really devastating, awful, and like difficult imagery, right? Like in the way that I think we're used to seeing. And I think one of the things that really came through in all your pictures was this idea of like hope and reverence and resilience. There's this really beautiful attitude of the photographer is present in the landscape here. So just a little note.
I have to say, Angela, I mean, just going through here and looking through them now, I've spent a little while with them since you've sent them to me, but I just, every single one. And I'm the amateur here, so you're talking to the professional, but I don't think there's anything that I would be able to cut out of all of these images. They're so fantastic. And this one's just lovely too.
And this one, you actually, you got a little prize, you got this recognized.
Mm-hmm.
This is a very sad photograph. I mean, beyond comprehension.
So this part of the island is the same place where the young people were jumping off the bridge in the earlier photos. And several of the buildings were actually moved like 50, 100 yards. Huge buildings were moved by the river. And when the water started receding, at all the wharves, there were, gas pumps for the boats, and they were torn off the source. So a lot of them had leaks. And I just happened to see this among some of the rubble. And initially I just took a cell phone photo of it. And then I was like, wait a minute, I need a real photo of this.
So
cell phone photos are real photos.
Photograph. Oh, I'm sorry, Jeff.
No, we're just going to say cell phone photos can be real photos.
I totally agree with that. Yes, they can. So this is where what you just shared about the young kids jumping off the ledge at the dock. If this, and they were in black and white, and you have this starfish and it looks like, oil or debris, killing it, that would really it would just bring a lot of magnitude to the environment and what had happened, and almost take the people and remove us from our being ourselves, being human, by taking the black and white and adding that context that you just shared.
The colors are so powerful though too. I see your point, but I'm looking at the color
because you're talking about devastation. You're talking about us being obliterated, and all of a sudden you take the color out of our skin. It kind of emphasizes what we're doing to humanity.
And also, I think in a way you're pointing a finger at the fact that like there's eventual death, that the human body doesn't actually live that long, but like nature persists in a way. So like to see the trees or even this architectural structures that outlive us, or like this thing happening, right? This is such a beautiful and grotesque image. I think that's such a powerful tool to utilize. I think that's an interesting idea, Ellen, that like some of the people pictures should be black and white. That's compelling.
Angela, just let me let you what's your reaction to that? Because I know some photographers, this is what they do, their color. I almost exclusively shoot black and white, and sometimes it's hard to wrap your head around the idea of going in a different direction. What's your thought about that?
So I have shot or I've converted some projects to black and white, and there are some that I do think belong in black and white. And I see your point about some of these images. It might make it more consistent if it were black and white, but then certain photos, I feel one of the things about PEI is the dirt, and it's just this vibrant color, and I would have a hard time losing that because I wouldn't change
the lands, the potatoes, the fishermen, anything that has to do with the climate. I'm just strictly talking about the community aspect, the people, the interacting just kind of on the side. They are, some of them, I think you asked about maybe a couple, what would you not include? I had a couple of notes on those. Like this one, I'm not so certain how this fits in with the rest of them, without words and context.
Right.
But
So
it's,
this
but it's a
particular
beautiful
photo,
image.
it was a solstice walk that the community took part in. And I do have other photos. I liked this one in particular. But I do see your point about how it, without a caption, it may not be clear how it relates.
And it may be that maybe a couple of the other photographs that you have of this with a larger landscape and really people and the light and this and the solstice, maybe there's something that would be a little bit with this photograph more compelling so that we as the viewer would get it right away. This in this context, I didn't have any idea.
Okay. I think that's really fair. And I think it resonates for me, that feedback, with some of the thoughts I had early on, which is that like sometimes the images feel like deeply editorial as opposed to the documentary artist person being present. And I feel like there's like the photojournalistic instinct, and then there's the moment where you step back and you put your own voice back in as the author photographer. And I think there are a few images that feel deeply editorial that I would probably pull out because they appear more like publication work. And I'm looking for like the intimate story and like where you deeply connect, for sure. So there was like a few fishing pictures where I was like, no, these are visual descriptions of a thing that's happening, but I don't think they're as elevated or exciting as like the woman on the boat with that arc, or the two women sitting on the pier, like, right? Like you see that they're personal stories, they're characters that you're developing so that we care about the community, as opposed to a general description of what happens here.
Right. And the hand, there's a photograph of a hand and I'm like, what's in the hand? I want to know what is in the hand?
That is oyster seed. It is the only indigenous owned shellfish hatchery in Eastern Canada. And so that photo and the two after it are people working on kind of like almost a barge. It's called something else, but they're basically working with the tiny little baby oysters, and those will be sold across the island to other fishers.
I actually agree with Erin though. When you go back, I think putting yourself in there and being less journalistic and more personal, because the personal photographs that are in here are just so compelling and draw me in. And this is your opportunity to continue down that vein. I love this.
Love this.
Angela, let me ask you something. So, because this is a question I have, and I think it's a really good thing for you, Erin and Ellen, to talk about. So, this difference between a project that's journalism or documentary versus something that's more personal. I mean, so Erin, but you are a journalist. You have been a photographer and a reporter for Boston Herald, the Associated Press, and a couple of other places that I forget. That's your history. Is this a journalistic project and that's the direction that it should be going, or is this something that becomes more personal in the way that they're talking about?
And that's for Angela, right?
Angela, yeah, I'm sorry. Angela.
I'm sorry. So it's a documentary project, and I do want to stay true to my journalistic roots while at the same time, obviously the photos with the family on the farm, I have spent a lot more time with them than with some other people. But also like this gentleman here, who's doing the hoop dance, he's somebody I've seen a number of times as well. And, his participation in the community, I feel, is important. But as the project develops, I've been spending more time with different people, and my photos are becoming more intimate. So you can tell in the photos with the farm family that I've had amazing access with them. They've been very welcoming. I can show up, I text them and say, hey, is it okay to come by? And sure. So they've been very, very welcoming, and it's an extended family. So several generations. The older gentleman in front of the barn is 96 years old. He took over the farm when he was 16 from his father. His father passed away, and then he's run the farm since then. And the little boy in the truck with the potatoes on top, which is also the same little boy that's very diligently working, grading potatoes on the conveyor belt. He's 4 years old, and that's his great grandson, and the baby is the great granddaughter. And the woman and the other man up the line are grandchildren. So there's multiple generations working here. It's an all hands on deck type operation. Some of the farms up there are very automated, which is something I've also photographed. But this family has drawn me in because they're doing so much still manually, in a more old-fashioned style way, but they're doing really well. They're preparing for climate change by changing some varieties of potatoes that they grow that are more drought resistant. They're very aware of all those things. So
I just want to say, Angela, the fact that you know them so well and that very clearly you love them, right? You clearly love these people. You love their tradition. You love their history. They're letting you in. You have this relationship. And that love and the things that you're learning is communicated directly through the images. And what's great, like when I think, Jeff, if you go back to like the picture of the grandfather, the 96-year-old guy, every single thing that you told us about this guy, which we could hear it in your voice to him when you talked about him, right? The respect you had for him is actually in the way that you built the picture. So I don't even need those details. I knew them as you were saying them. It's like, look at the unique shape of the barn. Look at the fade of the blue. Look at like the happy smile on his face and the reflection in the glasses. Look at the proud upward neck. Look how old and yet like strong and stable and beautiful. And he rivals the thing behind him. So it's this hopeward, like heroic glance. It's like everything you said about him being on the farm for 80 years, I felt it in your picture. So like you said it and you reiterated it, but I just want to really point out you're doing it, that work in the photos. And I think it's because you're making that personal connection to them, like truly. And I think like the tradition of Magnum photography and so many storytellers, right? Like they're personally invested. You know, we look at Larry Towell and we look at Nick Waplington and we look at like all these people who immerse themselves in a place, in a culture, in a family until they're in a way blurring the line and they're part of it. And like beautiful stories are told. I think you should, I would encourage you to keep going in that vein. I'm curious, I just want to throw out there, like Susan Paulson is just like a photographer whom I adore. She was a student of Harry Callahan's. And she has some really beautiful bodies of work, which are very much like photo, family journalistic from daily lives and small details, and they're color and black and white put together. And they're different formats put together. So it might just be something for you to look at and be like, oh, it is possible to tell a story with all these different formats. Because I think you're right there on the edge of it. They're really beautiful. Like this is lovely.
Since you're going back, I'm just going to reiterate the opportunity to photograph, make individual portraits, like the guy with the hoops. In that photograph, leaning over with the child, I'm not getting him, but I want to get him now that you told me his story. I want to know how invested he is, what he does for the community. And I think that if you focused a little bit more intrinsically on them and made actual, real traditional portraits per se, it would be very impactful for the rest of the body of work to go, coming together.
That's a great idea. That's actually something I started sort of more recently. So I have made a couple portraits of one of the farmers and a couple other community members, which I didn't include in here, but yeah, I have started on that, and I think that's a great idea.
So one of the questions, Angela, that you had was about sequencing. I thought we might try something that I haven't done here, so I'm not sure how well it's going to go.
And so I started with 34 and then 23 and then 15. So can you move them?
Angela, if that's okay for you me to move these around, are you okay?
Just to see what the story might look like.
34 and what?
23, 15, no, 20, is that
Okay,
23?
so now as I'm moving and the numbers are changing, that's the funny.
So 23, Jeff, is the little boy in the truck.
23. Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, so you need me to tell you that, okay. The next one would be the potato truck. Be 15 when you see it on the screen, bottom left. Yep, right there. Just to give you an idea, the starfish is not the first one. It would be 34, which would be the truck with the farm with the pink little. Start with that one. I mean,
Okay.
let's just look at those 3 photographs to start. It's kind of, that's how I started to build the story, like give me a place and then suck me in with a little boy and then put me in the farm. So I kind of went towards, you know, the industry and then kind of just interspersing. I don't know if it's worth, do you want me to try to go a little further?
Sure.
Angela, sure. Yeah. Go ahead.
16, which is, yep, that one. Oh, it's bottom right, second row from the bottom, second one in.
Number 34.
Yep, that one.
Got it.
34. Yeah.
Okay.
But it gives you an idea of the flow of the story that I started to feel that the order that they were in didn't necessarily give me that, suck me right in right away.
So Angela, it felt to me that you had sort of broken it up into separate subject areas in the sequence that you had in place. Is that right? Is that how you kind of came about with the sequence that you put together?
Yeah, so my thought process in it was that most people know PEI for the summer tourism. And in particular, the photo of the girl jumping with Teacup Rock. Teacup Rock is no more. It was destroyed during Fiona. And I took a photo of it about a little more than a year before that. And it was just a tourist jumping in front of the rock.
That's the first image that you had?
Yes.
That one.
So this one. So my thought process was kind of bring people into what they know, and then sort of take them on a little ride, a little more community oriented, and then show the industry and the people involved in the industries. And then I went into Fiona because that's the most recent thing. So it's a little bit, it's not 100% chronological, but there's definitely some chronology there. And so my thought process in The Woman with the Fire was that the solstice was one of, so many events had been canceled due to COVID. And then due to Fiona, basically so many businesses were shut down early because they were destroyed. Many of them were flooded or had power outages, or staff members had trees into their homes, so they couldn't actually even get to work. So they, much of the season shut down early, which was financially terrible for people. So the solstice walk, even though it wasn't the only event that has happened since Fiona, it was very well attended. It was outdoors. People were very, kind of joyous, and it had a really nice community feel to it. And this particular woman runs a dance studio, and she's very involved in the community. I've seen her at a number of events. So I feel that she, as an Islander, is an important kind of person in the story. But
so from one who documented everything that I could possibly document, one of the things I realize is that I can't always go in the order that I document to tell the story. And that's really hard because you want to go chronological, but I don't necessarily think it's always the most fruitful. And so I think if you liberate yourself a little bit from that, you'll be able to get the same sensation that you want for us to have and be completely enamored and in love with these people, but we don't have to see it chronologically to get there.
Does part of this depend on what the final, like where the final project ends up? if because it's a sequence in a magazine is going to be different than a sequence on a wall of a gallery, or is it? That's do we need to know or have an understanding of where you're going with Angela to have a better sense of how to be able to talk about the sequence?
So my original plan for this was to pitch it to a large newspaper or magazine, and that's not entirely out of the question at this point, but I'm also looking into the possibility of turning it into an exhibition and a book, perhaps some sort of interactive website. I would really love for this to be exhibited on PEI so that the people who are involved can see it and be a part of it and really get a sense of their community. It is a place that there are journalists there, and they're doing a great job, but it's not a place that attracts a lot of journalists because for the most part, it's a very idyllic place and the cost of living is very high there. So even though it might be an inexpensive vacation for people from the States or other parts of Canada, the cost of living there is very high, and there's under a 1% vacancy rate for rentals. So people are living in cars, in tents. They're living in sometimes not even winterized cottages because it's the only place they have to stay. So, I really want people to see themselves in this and have like really great documentation of the island way of life, that I don't think is, I don't think people have the time to spend on this. And I've just become really enamored with the place. I went there as a child, but when I came back, I have even a greater appreciation for it than I did when I was a kid.
Well, I feel both in the images and the way you talk about it, your passion for the area. So we're getting a little bit long, and I guess let's see if we can try to summarize our thoughts if that's possible. Is that something you can do, Erin? Give us a little wrap up of your final thoughts.
Yeah. I am just hearing you talk a little bit now about like the possible where this might land. I feel like everything is possible for you, and like the reoccurrence, like the relationships that you're building and the visiting, revisiting, and like that relationship is just like really deeply fruitful for you. And I think there might be multiple edits in the end, right? Like what a magazine pitch might look like could be very different than what an exhibit in the space or in the place looks like compared to what we might want to see here if you were exhibiting on a larger scale. And I think like this work is so compelling that I think there's room for all of those things in the work. But more than anything, I'm really left with like being excited and curious about this place and these people. So I feel like, I don't know if you've ever read Tracy Kidder, right? He's this amazing author, and like one of his really interesting bodies of work is about a town in Western Massachusetts, kind of like a town where everything happens. So it's like this little world, big world kind of thing comes together. And that's the sense that you leave me with here, that like I not only care about these people, but like it's exciting, everything happens here and you're part of that. So I want to see like where this goes.
Well, so Angela, listen, I thank you for coming on the Crit House. It really, I was excited before you came on because I love the work and I really enjoyed the conversation. It sounds like you have a lot to think about, and there's still a lot more work that needs to be done as you make your trip up tomorrow to do some more work here. But really, I'm just going through these images, and they're just beautiful. Really, they really are, and there's a lot to work with, and kudos to you on that. So I look forward to seeing it. Did you have any final thoughts about the things that we've talked about?
No, I really appreciate the feedback. It's helpful going forward. I'm an independent photojournalist and documentary photographer, so getting input from different people is really useful. Seeing what people like, what they don't like, what they feel helps to push the story further is it's really valuable to me. So I appreciate all your time.
Well, we're happy to do it. And, I mean, one of the things about the Crit House and getting critique from other people is you take what is important to you and you leave what is not. And everybody has an opinion, and not everyone can have the correct opinion. But thanks for joining us. It's great to have you on, and I'm really looking forward to this work. If you are interested in showing the work on the Crit House, please go to our website. There's a form where you can fill out and show your work here on the Crit House. We will be linking to a couple of videos with both Erin and Ellen and work they've done in the Crit House in the past. Angela, thanks again. Erin, thank you. Ellen, thank you. And thank you all for watching the Crit House.